Hello and welcome to this first episode of the second season of the Goal Hour podcast. It's been a while, but really, Camilo, we're back because, the end of the season of really kind of bumped up against this season. I feel for a lot of international players, when you think of guys like Pedro Gonzalez for Barcelona in Spain, I think he only had like a 4-day vacation by his own choice, but yeah, a lot of the seasons kind of brushed up against each other. We haven't really caught up with that many episodes after the end of the last one and into the international break. But now we're going to be back with more content, abridged episodes, more hyper-focused senses of things, where we'll probably be around 30, 40, 50 minutes going with content. But regardless, this upload schedule will probably remain the same.
Good boy.
With our schedule.
Sorry, I was talking to my dog, guys. You just peed on the pad. That's a little insight into my life.
Yeah, new dachshunds, as some people say. In America, dachshunds. Probably a few months old now.
Yeah, 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back into this football talk.
But yeah, regardless of what our upload schedule will be, it says bi-weekly on our page, but like we'll see how that goes. To be honest, I'm working most of the time in Syracuse, but this will probably be one of a few of the last in-person things we do before we switch over to Zoom and different things in regards to recording things. But what we're going to look at today is recording date August 13th and first day of the Premier League.
First day of La Liga.
Yeah, but
and the Bundesliga.
Also the Bundesliga as well, but after the game that we just saw, it was Arsenal versus Brentford to start out the season, and
very emotional game.
We saw first time Brentford actually was in the Premiership since, the top flight of English football.
Yeah, the top flight of English football, since the 60s or the 40s, I think?
46.
46, so
if we do the math, it was like over 70 years.
Which was cool.
There were people crying in the stands because not only are they up and they're finally at least getting game time, they got their first win 2-0 against Arsenal, and that brings us to the bigger picture of the league setting in general. But I guess, Camilo, considering you're a Spurs fan that's playing Man City on the weekend, at least it's something to celebrate when Arsenal looks even worse.
Well, worse, but we could. We might end up under them after match day 1 ends, but in thinking about it, we just played the champions of England, and they just played newly promoted side.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting season since day 1 now, it seems, as well as the other seasons. But just for this episode, we're going to mostly touch on the Premier League and English football, I guess, in general.
Yeah, 2-0, and Brentford really was the only team creating their own chances, really. And Ivan Toney, maybe not necessarily touted to getting goals in this first game, but he was also creating, as well as some of the other guys that got on the scoreboard. Really just an all-around team effort from that Brentford side to shut out Arsenal, getting what is known as a clean sheet. And Arsenal on the other side, the Gunners, just look shambolic, really, because you don't knock a team that gets scoring chances, able to create something, and maybe it's just not the best day from them on the finishing end of things, but they didn't get anything at all as far as what they should have been able to do, because it was just a really terrible performance, at least for me, as people have tuned in. If you're just getting back here for Season 2, Camilo, a Spurs fan. I consider myself a fan of Italian football and other things, but I consider myself very much neutral and more of a supporter of individual players, mainly Yuri Tielemans and Leicester City, among a few others, but definitely things to watch out for. But we talked about that a little bit, Arsenal versus Brentford, I guess. Before we get into kind of the Premier League landscape of what we're going to see for this season, we could just preview a couple of the games coming up, and of course the natural thing to think about would be Spurs versus Man City. I think that's a crazy thing to think about, that Harry Kane, with all of the transfer talk, still not out yet. There's rumors that bids are still going to be flying in from Sheikh Mansour and Man City, but assume Harry Kane is not in Man City and he's not playing for Spurs because he hasn't practiced with them yet. What does a Harry Kane-less Spurs side and Harry Kane-less Man City side, how do they fare against each other? I mean, what are your expectations at least to start the season?
I think, Spurs are obviously going to have, they don't have a striker right now. Well, a main striker.
Yeah.
A player whose main position is striker. So they're going to have some problems in the finishing aspect possibly. But you could say the same about City, but not really as, they have good players who score goals. Tottenham have the same, but just not as many. But I think with both teams having a few, honestly, Tottenham's new signings. I'm not really sure about City's new signings. It's not looking like a sweep of a game. It's not looking like Man City are just going to destroy Tottenham. I think Tottenham do have a very small chance of winning, but I'd probably give it to City.
Maybe not sure about City's signings because Jack Grealish for 100 mil was announced the day that Messi announced that he was leaving PSG.
Or leaving Barcelona.
Yeah. Obviously, as of a few days ago, Messi has signed for PSG rather, and they're going to have a super team. But we'll get to that later in future episodes about the prospects of PSG in European football as well. But yeah, it's interesting for me, Camilo. When I look at it, I think it's actually, even though Man City hasn't really signed a striker, I think it's advantageous that they got Grealish because when you think about how they played the no striker, false nine, they had De Bruyne in the Champions League. Obviously, it kind of faltered in the finals where they kind of didn't really know what they were doing, but they had played it for the better portion of the Premier League season to win the title, and it actually paid dividends to be able to have kind of a creative player in that recess role to float around wherever and then have the two wingers kind of push themselves inside as well. So I think getting Grealish helps them either way as well, but I don't think it rules out Spurs because I don't think that they're generally out of it. Obviously, if they get Harry Kane, it helps them more in future games, but I still regard Spurs as a quality side. But again, just like any side with new management, there's a lot of expectations, a lot of risks. Obviously, benefits could come from Nuno's tactics as well, but I don't know what to expect. But the obvious answer would be Man City's objectively the better side, more grounded, has the manager, and they get the 3 points. But that's something we'll see on Saturday, I believe? Sunday in the morning in the United States in Eastern time. But that brings us to a lot of other things. I guess we could look at the landscape, but you talked about transfers coming in, coming out. I feel like one thing that's worth noting is Southampton. Maybe we think about some of the teams that are in the mid-table, trying to make that push into European places, but then kind of fell short. Southampton was one of those sides where they were at first place with 29 points, and they didn't get another point for a month and a half.
Which is, for me, Southampton might actually go down this season, just based off what I've been seeing. Not that I'm super I don't know as much about other clubs as I know about Spurs, so I'm going to put it like this. I think Southampton let a lot of good players leave. Most importantly, what's his name? I can't remember his name. James Ward-Prowse?
Well, he's not left yet, but he's going to be sold.
He's going to be sold.
But the main player they've sold is Danny Ings to Aston Villa, and then Yannick Vestergaard has not been announced, but he's been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano and other reporters to go to Leicester over the transfer. So the big thing when we talk about these guys leaving is their first team players. Ryan Bertrand also went to Leicester, but they're not being replaced.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah, beginning of the episode, we've had dogs feature before. We've had my dogs, Miss Marlena and a few others.
Yeah.
They kind of come into the picture if you're watching by YouTube or if you're watching, or rather listening by other platforms. But these ones are a little bit more
loud.
Yeah.
Not very educated.
Not very educated, no.
So, but you're going to see a lot of new signings, hopefully for Southampton, because I think they've definitely gotten a lot of money from all these players that they've sold, these first team players that they've sold. So one thing I'm really questioning is it's near the end of the transfer window. Yeah. They're going to be scrambling a little bit. If they can make smart signings right now, I think they can definitely have a chance at top 10 even. But like right now, I wouldn't even see them like stay up. I don't know why.
Yeah, but it's all about panic buying too, and like when you get that close, teams are only going to sell you for an increased fee. So
Exactly, and that's why I doubt that they can find better players. So I don't know.
But you would expect that if they do buy someone, it's more of a panic buy and it doesn't help them. But
Those are my expectations.
yeah, there's other teams as well. These stars are crazy.
They are rabid. We should probably cut out some of the sound.
Yeah, I would, but I don't have my Adobe license.
Do you not?
No, the school, Syracuse University, paid for 11 months of Adobe.
You can
Sweet.
edit it offline, but you know.
Yeah. But Adobe has more like audio suppressors and things like that.
All right.
Things like that.
Oh yeah.
We'll just leave it there for a minute, guys. Now they're in the background. Still there, but you know. Those are the perks of the show, seeing
Dogs.
two purebred Dachshunds.
Mini
One
Dachshunds.
one with a red coat and one with a spotted
A black and tan coat.
coat as well.
A black and tan coat.
But yeah. I mean, we looked at the transfers now. Those are some of the teams that are kind of on the fringe, some of the teams we want to talk about, you can focus on.
You can focus on anyone.
You can focus on anyone, yeah. I mean, when you think of, like, what's the top 4 picture? Now it's kind of increased to the top 8 with the top 7, really, with the Europa Conference League.
Yeah.
Like, I guess we want to go into something now.
West.
What is that forecast? Firstly, I guess, I mean, if we look at the league last season, we'll compare the top 7, and then what we're going to look at as well is the bottom 3 that were relegated and some of the newcomers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the top was Man City, Man United.
Yeah, not very close, but you did see Man City. I think Man City had a big step over the other teams, did they? Or
Honestly, they had like 9 points by the end of the season, but I'm not completely sure.
I will check that right now. But I think the big thing will be, will City keep the title? Which is very, very possible.
Who was the other team before Chelsea?
Before Chelsea? Liverpool
Liverpool was a team that, with a lot of injuries, we didn't think could get there. That was the biggest surprise for me of the season, was Liverpool sneaking into 3rd. Because people were like, oh, they'll get in 5th, they'll get Europa, it's not bad. They still lost some guys in the transfer window.
Yeah, but I mean, they got 8th. They were at 8th place, like, mid-season, or in the middle of the season. So, I mean, it was very surprising that they had that comeback. And it was even closer to the end that they really had that resurgence. As well as Chelsea actually getting to win off the I think they got the Prem off, or not the Prem, I'm sorry, they got Champions League off of Tottenham beating Leicester that last day, which was, I mean, not surprising for me, because Leicester kind of bottled it a lot of the time.
They bottled the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, so but I could see like that same top 4 playing out. I just wouldn't see it in that order.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but if we go to the bottom now, looking at some of that, obviously West Ham got European football, which was great for them, but 3 teams that get relegated. Sheffield United wasn't a surprise. I mean, unfortunate, but
West Brom was less of a surprise.
Yeah,
because they had been promoted.
They were also expected to leave because they didn't really invest anything at all.
Yeah.
At all. They didn't really back their manager, and then they brought in Big Sam to be tactically backwards, which for the first time in his career didn't work.
Which is unfortunate for them. And Fulham, obviously, also just promoted. The only team staying up, or who actually stayed up after getting promoted from the Championship last season, being Leeds.
Yeah, and Leeds was
exciting
side to be. They obviously weren't even close to the relegation picture.
I think it's not surprising when you have a manager like Bielsa behind you.
And so when you talk about Bielsa, Camilo, he re-signed for a contract. I don't remember the term exactly of how much is supposed to be there, but he's basically in it for what is a few years, the long run, for this Leeds side to at least continue to establish itself in the Premier League. And I guess that brings us more to what's the relegation picture this year. Obviously, Leeds I think it's a fair question to ask, actually. In looking at kind of this Leeds side, if you look at teams that have maybe overachieved by some definitions in their first season, like Sheffield United in 10th the first season they got into the league, and obviously relegated the next. But it's a fair question of asking, is there a sophomore slump in store for Leeds United?
Or as they call it in England, second season syndrome.
That's better because it's 3 words instead of 2. I would do that. I gotta remember it though. Second season syndrome.
Yeah.
Second season syndrome.
But I don't see that. I'll just interrupt you here for a minute.
Yeah.
I don't see that behind the Leeds just because I think Bielsa is tactically so intelligent and he knows like who to sign. And he even knows like when to play younger players, like youth players, that I would have my full heart to believe that he would again keep the team up. Although I think a lot of these teams are getting more competitive, so I'd say it's harder for him to keep that top 10 position.
Yeah, I'd agree because when you think about some of the teams that are really successful in Europe, like of course I'm going to say Gasperini's Atalanta, is a lot of these teams that are basically unitary tactical systems where everyone has to play their role or it fails.
Yeah.
And Bielsa has done the same to where he brings in these guys to pull off tremendous upsets against sides and also to get the results that are strong when you need them against those bottom table teams. So would it be a surprise to see him back in the Prem again with this side and basically ascend to levels they haven't seen since the 90s and more, but going further, reeling it back, if he's not out for a second season syndrome, as they say, as we saw Sheffield United, I mean, who would you forecast being the 3 that go down? Because it's tough to look at this year because there's plenty of teams that could go there.
You have clubs like Burnley who have just been barely I wouldn't say they've been barely holding on to the Premier League, staying in the Premier League. I'd just say that you'd be surprised, I guess. But I'd put it all to the tactics of the manager because Sean Dyche, right?
Yes,
he's been playing a very, very defensive football, and he's been keeping Burnley in the Premier League. So I think Burnley I see them just barely staying up.
A lot of people see them being primed to be the side that gets relegated. But especially years past too has always been Burnley. They're going to be the side that slips down. But even their sides like Brighton, that maybe I want to say they finished in 14th or something like that.
Yeah, 16th.
16th, where they're a convincing side, but with their expected goals tallies, but they don't have very good finishing abilities up front. So it costs them when they're not able to climb up to mid-table, and they kind of still falter just above that relegation zone. So I don't think they're a side that goes down, but
you see them in 17th, 16th.
Yeah, I would hope that they make if Graham Potter had funding to maybe get another striker, I would think that he would be able to get to 12th or 13th. But I don't see that happening realistically. I mean, for the sides that do fall down, I feel like you would expect one of them from that caught up to go right back down. Norwich was one of the sides that's gone up, down, up.
They're a yo-yo club.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'll just be a little controversial. My prediction for 20th place. I don't watch much of their games, but just from my knowledge or my assumptions, I could see Newcastle going down 20th even, 19th or 18th.
I don't think it's astronomical to say so because Steve Bruce has come into that side and played a 4-4-2 and they haven't done anything magical. Despite having enough funding to pay some guys, it's not realistically they should be a Southampton type side. As the ceiling to get to 10th place and maybe a little bit more, but you're not going to get into Europe. They have a 50,000 seat stadium at St. James Park in Newcastle, Northern England, and they can't really fill it up when they're watching the most dejecting football you can possibly think about.
Yeah.
Some of the signings they brought in, like Miguel Almiron, he hasn't been bad. That's one of the stars from the MLS, but they brought in guys and they haven't been able to do much creatively up front. They actually had one of the worst goals tallies of last season,
which is
in chance creation as well. So the fact that they were actually just above the relegation zone.
Actually, I'll tell you one thing. They're surprisingly, for most of the season, I believe they were above the relegation zone.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, they were 12th place, which when I read that the other day, I was very surprised because they don't play creative football. They don't play attacking football. Which obviously it'll get you somewhere in like Spain. It'll get you the title in Spain even. But I don't think I think you have to play attacking football in like the Premier League a lot of the time, or even counter pressing in this era at least.
Yeah, I mean that's not surprising. But if you look at the other two sides, because we're agreeing basically that we think Newcastle could be primed to go down.
Yeah,
I like Norwich coming into the season. Obviously, they're losing only Skip, one of the loanees they had from Tottenham last season, Emi Buendia, off to Aston Villa as well. But Nigel Farke has been one of the managers that's been in it. The ownership also backs him. Nigel Farke, right?
Daniel Farke. Daniel Farke, I think.
I feel like I confused that with Farage. Interesting. Well, yeah, Daniel Farke. He's been there for a while, and the ownership basically said, we don't care if you get relegated, but we believe that you'll get promoted. Which has happened the past few seasons. The reason I'm saying that I think that he stays up is because I would expect other teams to go down. Firstly, when you look at the picture of teams that have gone up, Watford's coming into the picture. Are they a convincing side? Not necessarily for me. I mean, if I had to pick one team just to throw it out of the hat, that's the team I pick, unfortunately. Because, like, when you think about it, it's really just up to fate unless a team fails miserably, which could be Southampton. But I think Southampton drops, but I don't think they drop all the way.
I could see Southampton drop. For some reason, I have this listed. I have it written down. I put Crystal Palace down in 18th, but now, looking at their transfers, it might not be super likely.
I mean, they also got Patrick Vieira, but the question, of course, is will he bring them out of kind of the slumps they've had with Roy Hodgson? Not that it was Hodgson's fault, it's just they don't really have a lot of investment in the club to do things.
But I mean, with these new signings, I could see the team staying up, but I'd say it could go either way. But with Watford, touching on Watford, I see them staying up, but just barely by 1 or 2 points. As they've played in the Premiership before, and I'm not sure if did they instantly get relegated or something.
I think they stayed up for probably like 2 or 3 seasons. I do know that it's not like they're primed to go down because they don't have experience at all, because they have Ben Foster. Danny Rose recently went to the side. They got a few other signings across the line. And
they have a Colombian player, Cucho Hernandez, who he didn't have a great season last season at Getafe, but I could see him helping them if he has a good season.
That's fair. But, I mean, tough to see which teams go either way. That's for sure.
I mean, Watford do have a lot of Premier League experience, for a lot of years or a lot of seasons recently. So I could see them staying up. I mean, they weren't necessarily like a established Premier League side, but they stayed up for a long time. So I'll back them to stay up, just barely.
But I guess now to the opposite picture, how we'll close out this episode is looking at what is now considered a top 7, really, because the Europa Conference League is now here to stay for however long UEFA decides, pretty much, I'd assume. And last season, we saw Spurs kind of clinch it towards the end. It was them versus Arsenal, so I guess a derby of what was probably very underwhelming for both sides to be competing for. I mean, Camilo, not to rag on it, but I can't recall who's Tottenham's drawn against, but when you think about the Europa Conference League bringing a lot of opportunity to a lot of kind of the other lower level countries in Europe, Arsenal's obviously not there either, but then West Ham, Leicester, And, of course, that top four, Chelsea, Man United, City, also getting into the Champions League.
Europa Conference is very different from, I'd say, not very different, but it's pretty different from other European competitions.
Yeah.
So they're all qualifying. All of these teams who have qualified for the Europa Conference are qualifying from qualifiers. So Spurs have qualified against, or they've been like drawn against, I think, a Portuguese team, I believe.
Yeah.
Or it might be a Romanian team or something. I'm not sure if they're playing one qualifiers or if they have one qualifier and then another qualifier after that. But either way, I could see them qualify for the competition this season.
Yeah.
From the qualifiers, obviously. But let's just... what direction do you want to take this into? Who do you see?
I mean, firstly, I guess we could say what's the forecast for Europe this season with English sides, and then go into predictions for what would be next season. But that also brings up title implications and such. But I guess we'll start. I guess we can't really think about the Conference League considering like
all these qualifiers.
There are a lot of qualifiers and obscure sides as well. But we could definitely look into Europa League and Champions League. Europa League's West Ham and Leicester. I mean, Leicester's last season they lost in round of 32 to Slavia Praha. So,
which is,
or I think they actually it was Braga from Portugal.
I don't remember. It was just very unfortunate that they left. So they got like out so early because they had a good season last season. You'd expect them to do good in Europe.
I mean, the one thing it helps, though, is that when you saw with Conte's Inter side that won the Serie A last season is if you lose out in European competition, even if it is the Champions League, like his side, it does give you more time to reset focus on domestic challenges and the league as well.
Yeah,
so I think it did help their push towards the end, but again, they lost a really controversial game where I believe it was Newcastle. It was their second to last game of the season, and Leicester should have won the game, put it to bed right away. If they won the game before their last game against Spurs, they would have been through to the Champions League. But they left it up to that fate and ultimately bottled it again. So, with that, do I see Leicester succeeding and pushing for a Europa League try? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can...
I would still think that they focus more on their league finish than the Europa League, in my opinion. But West Ham, on the other hand, they have a side that is really looking to push historic things, one of the smaller clubs in London. And they have really Mark Noble in his last season, the skipper that's been there, Mr. West Ham, and then Declan Rice is also there, Thomas Suchek, Paulo Falls, Mikel Antonio up front, now Alphonse Areola.
Unfortunately,
on loan.
Well, yeah, but I don't see him starting even.
Well, they have Lucas Fabianski, but what they say is probably one of the immediate replacements, considering Fabianski's was injured a lot last season. They had to play their backup, Randolph, and I want to say he's 35 now.
Oh.
Something like that.
So, yeah, I could see them switching out a lot.
So, yeah, they'll probably get reps both ways, but either way, they have quality in goal, whether it's Fabianski or Adiola.
Yeah.
So, they're a team that could definitely do bits. I mean... Has an English team even won the Europa League in the past? Well, besides Chelsea?
I assume so. I'm not a big Europa... Oh, yeah. Well, Europa League or European League. Second League? Or, like, European second competition? Because I know Tottenham have won it twice before.
Well, yeah, the equivalent.
Yeah. I think historically a lot of English teams have won it.
But in the past while, I would say that after Chelsea kind of won the Champions League, went on a bit of a decline, it is now kind of ascended to levels of... I think they won the Europa League twice before they got to the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that with a lot of teams. You had with Mourinho, you had him win the Europa League with Porto, and then he won the Champions League the next season. So you could see those as an opportunity. I wouldn't say money-wise, but experience-wise for players. That could help.
Yeah, I mean, probably predictions would be far too early, but obviously both sides have prospects It'd be exciting to see West Ham go as far as they could, not only for the money, but for Mr. West Ham's last season, Mark Noble as well.
Definitely.
But top 4 is a little bit different. Man City would be expected to win. Chelsea, not as much, but I feel like Tuchel's been pretty convincing, to be honest.
Champions first with the English teams, right?
Yeah, so we got Chelsea, United, City, and I keep blanking.
Liverpool.
I keep blanking on Liverpool. Because, like I said, I forgot about them sneaking into the picture after they were in 7th and 8th for quite some time last season. But
I'll just start off.
I mean, it's fair. I would say I'll start off real quick and say it's fair to say that my prediction is United won't win, and they won't get to the semi-final. They won't get as far as that. Last season, I predicted that they wouldn't do as well. Like, I believe they actually got eliminated in the group stage.
They did. They went to the Europa League.
Yeah, I thought they would get knocked out, but the crazy thing was that they were leading the group stage 9 points after 3 matches, and they lost their final 3. What happens is what I think about the United side is they're a good side, but they don't have the quality to get a result, hold a result, get it across the line. In those big games, I mean, they got to the Europa League final last season, but before that, it was prime for them to win, and they lost in the semifinals. I don't think Ole's won a title yet, which is not a knock against him because he's done a good job building up this side, in my opinion. Kind of really integrating all the players and pieces that they have, but I just don't think that their defense is good enough still. I just have an agenda against Maguire for all of our listeners here, but I don't think their defense is good enough. I think their goalkeeper dilemma is really questionable. Like, if you have a world-class keeper in De Gea, despite his penalty woes, among other things, I feel like you should be looking at the team around it. But they can do good things as well, but I'd still say that they're not going to do huge things in the Champions League.
I could see them qualify for the round of 16.
Yeah.
And then it's just based off the draw then. If they draw against a team like PSG, they're not going to go through.
Yeah, if they draw against a team like Atalanta, they're obviously not going to go through or anything like that.
Yeah, because Atalanta, PSG.
Well,
but
high pressing.
I could see them get to the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
I think the semifinals might be a stretch with them.
Mm-hmm.
But they've made Jadon Sancho that signing, which is pretty good.
But they can't waste them. Is the big question. They bought Donny Van de Beek for a position that's already been taken, and now he's gone. Obviously, you're not going to sit Jadon Sancho on the bench, but the question comes to: are you going to sit other people on the bench? Are you going to?
But you have depth.
Waste, yeah.
You have
but
depth as well.
Is Mason Greenwood going to get better with even less game time, considering how the Van de Beek situation has been handled? We don't know. As far as management,
I would expect him to maybe put what he did with Lingard with Van de Beek, or
that's what's crazy too. Lingard's also back into the fold, so that's another Kane right there.
But I'd say like Mason Greenwood or Van de Beek might go out on loan. Is my assumption. If I were old, I would do that, but I'm not old, so I can't say what he's gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
But my assumption is they're gonna use all those players for next season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once they do that, or they're going to use all those players for European competition as well.
Yeah.
So I think they have depth. That's the main thing. They have depth, and they have quality in that depth. So I could see them like do that good, as I said before.
Yeah. But for those of you that maybe scrolled to this point or got this far, obviously, we have one dog that's more emotional than the other. I guess that's a simple way to put it. Yeah, one's kind of chilling here, Pedro Gonzalez, we call him, friend of the show. His name's Pedro. But shifting things back to kind of the Champions League talk, we got through United. It's obviously City that finished first in the Premiership. You'd expect them to do great things, but I guess we'll move along here. There's Chelsea and Liverpool. Liverpool I think is probably one of the most interesting pieces of conversation, Camilo, because really, I feel like they're a side that could do anything when healthy. Because they're going to get Virgil van Dijk back. Obviously, Alisson's in goal. And they're going to have a few other pieces as well. Obviously, Gini Wijnaldum left, but they brought in Konate over the line. And it's not like they were lacking for depth at all.
Oh, we did forget to say one thing about Manchester United.
Oh, yeah?
I'll just say it really quickly. They do have Varane, so that's good for them.
Yeah, that is fair.
But
my only agenda against Maguire is I think that they'll realize that he's still going to make defensive mistakes. Because Varane is obviously a quick, pacey guy, but basically you just get across the line, you get past Maguire, and you're in behind, in my opinion.
Yeah. But back to Liverpool.
So they'll just bench Lindelof, and we'll see how they do. We'll see how they fare. We'll see if they miss Lindelof. That's my prediction that they will. But
Liverpool.
I think it's really interesting because people have forgotten about how dominant they can be.
Yeah, I mean, they have one, not even a bad, well, yeah, it's a bad season from their perspective,
Yeah.
but from just a football perspective, they didn't have like a bad season in the end there. The result wasn't bad. So I could see them dominate the Champions League again. They just need confidence. I think they need to build that confidence with most of the team. But also the problem is depth again.
I would say it also helps with their league finish, though.
Yeah.
If they get healthiness to go their way and they can have really a fast, fiery start in the league, you think about it's tough to play from behind and try to claw your way back into positions you want to be rather than holding where you are and defending that. And for Liverpool last season, they were a side that basically had to make do with what they were able to get with all the injuries and all the people they had to substitute and fill in. So, in my opinion, if they're able to get to a really quick start and able to hold their position where they're at, then it would be an important, really, victory for them to basically continue going on as far as they can. That's my biggest prediction, Camilo. If the side can get off to a start and hold their league position, I think it only pays dividends to their European international futures as well. Because if you're playing, they were playing from behind last season, trying to get into a league position and trying to basically sustain what they could in the Champions League, losing out, I think, in the quarters, something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it would be a stretch to see the side that lost in the finals, then won it the next season, then won the Premiership the year after. I don't think it'd be a stretch to say they could get into one of those Final Four spots or even a final.
I mean, no, it's anybody's.
It's anyone's game from there.
For all we know, Braga could, or not Braga, I'm sorry, Sporting could win.
Yeah.
So it's anything, but I could definitely see them get to the final. It's really just about where Klopp wants to put the importance on the league or Europe.
Yeah.
But I put them as one of those contenders for the Champions League. Now with Chelsea, I don't see them going to 2 straight finals.
I agree, yeah.
But Tuchel is a very good manager, and I could see him.
I could see them pushing for the league.
I could see them pushing for the league or even Champions League, but it's honestly like Tuchel's made the signing of Lukaku, which is going to look important. Now he's going to, I guess, relegate Werner to the wing.
Yeah.
And
Havertz is also on the wing with Mason Mount up the middle, so.
I mean, he has a lot of quality players up front as well as in the back, but like he has a lot of players on that team, like big names on that team. You have Marcus Alonso on the bench, and like you have.
I mean, when he plays 5 in the back, I love it when he plays 5 in the back because Alonso is basically a de facto winger at that point.
Yeah.
He just goes up and he attacks, which is only really works in that system.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. So Tuchel like understands how to use the players correctly, when to use them. So obviously when you have like a lot of egos, I guess, on the team. So when you have like a player like Christian Pulisic who's on the bench and he's getting upset, he's fair. It's fair. He's upset that he's on the bench. he's going to have some problems with like the team morale and stuff. But so long as they back him and they believe in him.
But also Pulisic to Tuchel is like Mourinho to Dyer.
Yeah, well,
when we say Mourinho to Dyer on this show, we talk about how when Mourinho was at Spurs and Dyer was there because Dyer spoke Portuguese, it's basically like a father-son relationship, whereas Tuchel and Christian Pulisic were actually there in his prime days at Dortmund.
Yeah.
So they actually had an established relationship before Tuchel came to Chelsea. So what people expected of Tuchel and Pulisic was to have a blossoming relationship, but obviously all those signings Frank Lampard brought kind of hindered that prospect.
Diminished Pulisic's role in the team.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so long as he's happy with a super sub position, that'll help them. But either way, he has a lot of good players, and it's not just Pulisic. So he can use other wingers. He can even use like players like Callum Hudson-Odoi who are rumored to be leaving. Is it Callum Hudson-Odoi who's rumored to be leaving?
Tammy Abraham.
Tammy
is
Abraham
rumored
as well.
Transfer rumors as well.
So you see, he has like so many forwards. Are they both from Chelsea? Like, did they both develop in Chelsea?
I think Tammy was. I'm not sure about. I think they both did, to be honest. Yeah.
So I mean, like you have those two players who are. Well, you have Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham who are both like produced by the team.
Yeah.
And those are two quality players, but then you have like 5 other players in those positions who are also great. So it'll be up to Tuchel who he's going to play when he's going to play them. But attacking wise, he has a lot of depth, which means he doesn't really have to focus on one or the other, League or Europe.
I mean, lastly, now if we move towards after looking at those 3 sides, I guess. The main side of them all really would be Man City, because Man City's the side obviously that won the Premiership last season, but they've also really dropped off in the Champions League final. They weren't able to get a goal on the board. They had plenty of options, depth on the bench to create things, but ultimately they couldn't pull through on the result where they were the favorites against Chelsea. Going into that final, that was really a close 1-0 victory. That goal from Havertz. But I guess when you look into the prospects of what they expect, going forwards, them and PSG are the 2 sides that are the main sides that are expected to win the Champions League. When you think of a team that has so much expectation placed on itself, whether you think of a Man City or a PSG, sometimes the expectations can get to them, but I mean, you'd have to think that regardless, Man City's always in contention for a Premier League title, but what they want, along with PSG, is that Champions League victory. And Camilo, I think you can agree with that in the sense that PSG and Man City are both kind of those sides that have won the title now for ages, and they're the sides this year that are knocking on the door, and they're the ones that are saying we're next up. But
especially with the managers, I'll say.
I mean, my personal opinion is that Man City will underwhelm in the Champions League again. The way I look at it is that when you bring in so much money and talent into these sides, is that they don't have enough willpower, really enough adversity to battle through challenges that they may not expect on the way because they're so good. So that's
like Juve and Portugal.
Yeah, like Juventus has never really been able to get over the hump. I believe Man City will do the same this season, but you never know. We could see a Man City PSG final based on the draw. But I mean, what do you expect for Man City going to next season, whether it's internationally or the title as well? I believe they're primed for any result in both those competitions.
I'll just put it like this. I think Man City. I'll just also talk about PSG here for a second. Man City and PSG both have managers who really want that Champions League, especially because they've been so close. Well, obviously Pep has won it a lot, but he's trying to win it again. So that's the biggest push. And I think that's the biggest factor for Man City to really go for it. I'd assume the players would want to win it, not just for themselves, but also for the manager. And also with PSG, you'd have Poch, who's already been in a final. He's been so close. Kind of like Tuchel. So I could see either I could see like a final of those two, but it's really it's anyone's game. So that's why I'm, this early on, it's very hard to make Champions League predictions. But Man City have expectations right now to make it to another final, I guess, but it's possible that they won't.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how hard it is to place expectations. I'm basically taking that out of your mouth from 10 seconds ago, Camilo. But really, to close this out, I mean, not even your top 4, really, but what would be your top 7? To finish this episode really way too early, what do we expect from the Premier League landscape for this season? After only having watched Brentford and Arsenal, obviously they're not in contention for the top 7, but what do you think about, just based on last season? I mean, I can say right away that I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool comes back to win a title. That would be my dark horse candidate, but the obvious choice is City to go for it again.
And then you have Chelsea as the second option.
Yeah.
I'd say that those 3 teams are going to be on the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction is City, Chelsea, Liverpool. I could see Chelsea win it. I could see Liverpool win it. But with City's just immense talent and how they won it, like, how many times in the last 7 years? Or 7 seasons, I guess.
The Premier League?
Yeah, they've won it like 4 times or something, 5 times.
Yeah.
So, it's really just a question of, can they do it again? Or is it going to be someone else's season?
Yeah.
And then for 4th, I'm just going to jump through these really quickly.
Yeah.
For 4th, I'd see United. So I'd say the top 4 are going to stay the same, just different order.
Mm-hmm.
I can see United get that because they do have better players now. And then 5th, I'm going to guess that Leicester might actually bottle again.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be very disappointed, but
yeah,
because they've gotten some good signings now where they should be able to finally get the job done. They had some injuries like to their back line with Johnny Evans and Fofana, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they finished 5th.
6th, biased, but I'm going to guess Tottenham.
Hey, you never know if they get top 4.
I mean, this is even a stretch. 6th for Tottenham. I think Nuno can really push them to succeed, and I think it's just to see, like, will Nuno work. 7th is Aston Villa.
That's a good pick, actually.
Yeah, no, because they have the money now from the Grealish signing or selling Grealish.
Yeah.
And then you guys might ask, what about West Ham? I think that they have like a lot of good players and such, but I do see the lack of Lingard.
That's a very important factor
problem
as well.
So I'd put them. I wrote down here I put them in 10th, but I could see them go to like 9th or 8th.
Yeah.
6th, 7th.
I see them staying at the top of half of the table, but yeah, they could definitely fall off. And with that, you got through all of our predictions, really what we see for the Premier League landscape, and a little close reaction that we had for Brentford and Arsenal, the first game to kick off Premier League action. I mean, really, it's going to be exciting to see what's in store because the schedule with COVID impacting a lot of the scheduling still in the UK and other countries is just back to back to back to back to back. We're getting games every time, but for our schedule going forward for this next month here as we kind of shuffle our way into college schedules, I think we'll be pretty consistent after that, maybe into September. Obviously, just stay tuned to our socials that are linked on all of the pages here, and you can follow along for that. But
we're probably going to do, I'd assume, like one of these episodes for all the other top 4, maybe the other top 3 leagues.
Probably, yeah.
Other than that, stay tuned.
Yeah, other than that, we'll just skip along to whatever. But then again, if you need the updates, stay tuned to the socials, do whatever you want, and we'll bring what we can as far as the second season of Footy on the Goal Hour podcast.
Ciao!